Welcome to George Fox Talks. I am so excited for you to hear this episode. We're going to talk about the coded language people use when they talk about justice and theology issues. We're going to talk about faith and immigration. And we're going to talk about what it means to include children in the church today. I'm here with Jennifer Toledo, who's an author and a speaker and a strategist and a leading voice for the theology of justice, the undiluted gospel, and the place of children in the church today. I'm super interested in that already, by the way, just so you know. She's a senior pastor at Expression 58 Church, just north of Los Angeles, or really maybe in Los Angeles, we could say. She is currently working to see an end to the foster care crisis in Los Angeles. And in addition to pastoring, she leads the Justice Group, which is an international organization helping to bring transformation to some of the greatest issues of injustice today. Jennifer, I'm so happy that you're here.
I sound amazing.
Pastor
Hope
Jennifer.
I can live up to that. Wow.
You will live up to it. I had to omit things because you are a Renaissance pastor. Sometimes when people talk about a theology of justice or justice issues, they hear this as coded language that means not conservative, not for white people, and votes a certain way. How do you think about that? Those codes.
That's such a good question.
Those codes that people have in their mind. Like, do you think they're fair? Do you try to avoid them? Like, what's your take on that?
You know, I think they're fair in the sense of everybody and their grandma is out here trying to define what justice is, right? Your political party, your parent, depending what generation you're part of, everybody's got a definition of justice. But what I'm interested in is God's definition, the biblical definition, and how, as a person of faith, do I live that out?
Wow, yeah.
So for me, I understand all the nuances, the cultural baggage that word comes with, but I'm deeply curious and hungry for biblical justice and what that really means and how do we live that out. There's a verse in Isaiah where it says, "For I, the Lord, love justice." And
that's a beautiful verse.
It's a beautiful verse. And I want to love what God loves. So I want the right definition of it. So for me, I've kind of been on this lifelong quest of what is biblical justice and how do we really live that out? And the reality is it's beautiful. Yeah. And it's not all the things we think it is. It's not right or left, and it's not political, and it's not punishment, and it's not, it's really the heart of God. It's the heart of the kingdom. Wow. And so it's something that really gets me excited.
I was reading the other day in the book of Leviticus. You brought up this beautiful justice reference, and this just came to my mind. It's a verse, and I forgot the reference. Maybe we could put it in the notes. Maybe we won't. Maybe you could just look it up, which is that it's a verse that says something like, "You shall not put a stumbling block before the blind. I am the Lord your God." And I was just thinking about that. Yeah. I thought about that, like the way even our infrastructure of our walkways in our city, like that's, for people who love the word of God and are looking to the Bible for instruction, you shall not put a stumbling block before the blind. Yeah. And then God puts his identity at stake. Like, why say that? It juxtaposed. Yeah. You shall not put a stumbling block for the blind. I am the Lord your God.
Signed by me, God.
Signed by exactly me. Yeah. And so, it feels like this.
He cares deeply.
Yeah.
I'm a huge believer that justice is not just for the woke hippie, I think sometimes we have this idea that justice is something that certain types of people, maybe that are more missional or more whatever.
Well, that's what I mean by coded, right?
Yes.
That it's like certain people hear that and that's become, to put it bluntly, that's become the language of the left.
Right.
Like this idea of justice. But it's like, I know lots of conservative people who love justice a lot too. So nobody should be excluded from this is what I hear you saying.
And what I would take it a step further, not only should nobody be excluded, but if you really look at justice in Scripture, it is central to the gospel and it's a non-negotiable. Truly. It's not an elective in the Christian faith. I don't care where you fall on the spectrum, left or right, justice it's literally baked into the nature of who God is, and it's the family business. It is what we do. Justice is the culture of heaven. Injustice is the culture of hell. This is literally who we are. And so I'm passionate to see that Christians really rally around God's understanding of it and for us to really take our place in the world because we're letting everybody else define it and do it in a really messy, sloppy way. And Christians should be leading the way and really restoring our communities and loving people and seeing God's intention and dream over people brought back to life.
I don't think it's fair to ask you to solve this. Then again, if you can, all the better. Why are we so divided about this then? If it's so central, if God has staked his identity on this and it's biblical and people should be able to say amen to this, right?
Yes.
And yet there's apprehension. I could feel apprehension. A person listening could feel like, oh, okay, but what direction are you really going with this, right? Like, why are we still in that place?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think not to like over spiritualize this, but I think
Go for it.
There is a real spirit realm, and there is a real, I think the enemy of our souls and the enemy of our day wants there to be division. And it is the age-old thing of putting our hope in man to fix problems, right? Like we put our hope in a king. We put our hope in our political preference, our party to fix things. The reality is man cannot fix the problems. We need the kingdom of God to come crashing in. We need love to heal us. We need God, And so I think it's getting our focus off of hoping our political party, wherever you are, is going to fix this nation and fix, and really putting our hope back where the only safe place for it to be, on God, and really aligning with what God, who is the King of justice. So let's come rally around him and let's be more kingdom culture than Republican culture or Democratic culture. Let's be more kingdom culture than American culture. Let's be more kingdom culture than anything. Yeah. And I think if we can really rally around that, there'd be a lot of healing. But I think we have so many people drank the Kool-Aid, and we're just
totally
angry and pointing fingers,
I think in times of pain or just distress in my own life, I can gravitate toward really concrete, simplistic ideas, sometimes not even in a good way. And I wonder if we're just in, like, I don't know, is our country or our culture or people, are we just in a place of pain where it's just easier to gravitate towards simpler expressions? Like, I'm just voting for this guy or this lady, and that's just what I believe. Yeah. Give me something I can see and handle, because it is kind of painful and it's hard to even know. Totally.
I think we've lost a lot of our ability to hold nuance. I mean, we're seeing that, right? Like this deep polarization. And the reality is, if you sat any of us down and had a conversation, we all know these things are far more nuanced. We know immigration is nuanced. We know sexuality is nuanced. We know finances are nuanced. We know these things are all very nuanced. But yet we tend to just, like you're saying, I think people are burnt out. I think people are kind of lazy. And so rather than holding the tension of the nuance, we'd rather just say, we want some simplistic answer. And it just doesn't work that way.
I found in my own self, this is just me, probably no one can relate, but I found that it's very easy for me to get all up in my head about things and come up with lots of abstract ideas about people. But I found a weird thing, which at least shows me that I have hope, that God is not finished with me yet. That when I'm let's say I knew you in my life, and let's say I have negative ideas about you, your views, these things you say, and I'll stew about this all day, all night, over the weekend. And then I come back to work and we're together, and I don't feel that way when I'm actually with you.
Totally.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's hard to feel that way, I think, sometimes in the actual presence of a person. Sometimes the person can agitate you. But for me, I find that lots of the problems are actually just like in my head, or they're in fake ideas I have about people.
Completely. And that is being deeply, experienced because we are more isolated than ever.
Yeah.
We're not with people. We're not sitting down having conversations like this. We're so all these conversations that we're having and these ideas are being built from behind our little computer screens. We're not interacting with people. I buy my groceries, get delivered to my door. I don't even have to go, I don't even have to walk into a grocery store sometimes. I can pre-order my coffee and have it ready when I get there. I get into my car in my garage, I don't even have to see my neighbors.
Right.
It's like we've built a world where we don't actually have to sit with people. And
why did we do that?
A great question.
Why did we do that? Well, how did that happen? Is it just more convenient, or is it like...
it was birthed from convenience, but I think we didn't think through the full effect of how it would erode at our souls.
Yeah. Yes. And sometimes things have unintended consequences too.
Right.
I thought this just the other day. I mean, this is a little bit random, but I think on this point of the world we create that we don't mean to create, I think I love AI. I love these models. I love ChatGPT. I have a subscription. I use it. So I'll do everything. I'll be cooking. I'll look up recipes. It did occur to me though, a couple months ago, when I look up a recipe, even looking up a recipe online, what that replaces is what I used to do, which is I used to call my grandma to ask her. My grandma's still alive. I have one grandma still alive. And I used to call her to be like, what does deglazing mean? I don't know what that means. I'm supposed to deglaze the pan. I don't know what that means. And I would call her, and now I don't. Am I getting that answer faster now? Yes. Am I living a better life now because of that? I don't think so, actually.
Right.
I don't think so. And so that was an unintended one, though. I never would have
Right.
sat down and thought, how can I avoid calling my grandmother or my mom, and asking these kinds of questions. It just kind of happened.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing that exact thing at a mass scale,
Yeah.
And so we're
Can I ask you as a pastor in church, like how does this play out in church? These ideas of being together versus these things we do to avoid each other versus even the things that churches have probably had to do since COVID just to accommodate people who we want or don't want. I mean, as a pastor, you probably just have to deal constantly with like people's wants and not wants and how should the coffee thing be set up and all this stuff. Like this must play some role in church too, right? These dynamics we're talking about. How has this played out in church in the last few years for you?
Man.
Avoiding people and confronting people and just being together.
Being together. I think it's so good. I recently told our church, I've said this many times, so they're not shocked by it when I say it, but it always feels a little like, this feels a little strange, not strange to say, just bold, I think. But just reminding us, like, this church isn't built off of our preference and wants and desires. We exist for God. The church is God's dream. The church is God's idea. He is the head of this church. We're not just, this isn't just, a democracy where we're all here like, well, what do you want? And what do I want? And what, there is, of course, we value people's opinions. You know what I'm saying? But I think we have, to a fault, tailored the American church, maybe even really in the quest for really trying to bring in new believers and seeker sense of the whole thing. I think we focused, we centered ourselves way too much rather than Christ and the mission that we're called to be on together. And so I think there's some downsides to that,
Is it especially, I mean, forgive me if this just sounds like kind of an ignorant, country boy type question, but is that especially hard in a place like LA? Hollywood, I'm thinking of the atmosphere and just the way like a kind of certain, culture is, and probably, obviously there are many beautiful things. I'm not trying to stigmatize it, but there must be special challenges even in an environment like that too.
I think for sure. I think that LA's so vast, right? We're like 11 million people and it's so diverse. The little neck of the woods I'm in, well, I would say the majority of LA actually is quite diverse. So like our community, which is interesting because I've spent time in ministry in the South and in the Midwest, and people are always shocked. They're like, "Oh my gosh, what's it like in LA?" And I'm like, I've actually found the most on fire, authentic, humble followers of Jesus in LA than I have anywhere else. So, but our church is also multi-ethnic. It's also multi-generational. Like there's some different elements to that. So not to say that there aren't churches in LA that are very maybe somebody else would look and say, oh, that feels very shallow or that feels very, whatever. I don't know, fill in the blank. But I feel like you can find that anywhere.
Totally. I went to an Ivy League PhD program that sounds like a very impressive place. And people always say to me like, oh, that must have been just like a dark place. Like we're Christian. I'm like, there were some of the most bravest, sincere Christian people there.
Totally.
Just like these stories. So just like you're saying, in a way, like things that people have stereotypes about, but it's just not true actually.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, not being in the Bible Belt is, Christianity is not cultural in LA. So for those that are Christians, they're legit Christians.
You choose it.
You're choosing it.
And
you're paying a high price.
This might even put you at odds with some people in a way.
And they're, it's beautiful. So I actually have had such an incredible experience in church in LA because I find very hungry, authentic believers.
Yeah. I was actually looking at your church's website because I was like, Expression 58, it's just a cool name. People can look up that name for themselves, okay, and where that comes from. But I was looking at your leadership team at your church, and I have making some assumptions visually, may be wrong, but it looks like you have a truly gender and racially diverse church leadership. And I imagine your congregation, you just said. What does it take to lead a team that's diverse like that?
Oh, I love it. I love it. You know, it has been such a gift. When we took over, so we planted the church with some friends 20 years ago, and then we took over as lead pastors 10 years ago. When we took over as lead pastors, the church was not very diverse at all. And that was something that we began to pray for. We're like, big believers that the church should reflect the city. And our city is incredibly diverse. And so we were like, God, send us a diverse community, you know? And so it's been this beautiful journey. And our community genuinely is not just multi-ethnic, truly multicultural in a sense of there is not, because sometimes you have a multi-ethnic church, but there's still one predominant culture.
Sure.
And so our community is truly multicultural. And I think it's definitely my favorite thing. And I think it draws a lot of people that, I think we're in a moment very much so in the West where I think there's a real kind of third culture, like people that are really looking for, they don't necessarily want to attend their, parents' Spanish-speaking church or Korean-speaking church or predominantly white church. They're looking for something, more diverse or looking for, So I think there is a moment culturally where there's a real hunger for that. But it is a joy. It's a challenge. You can't really lead a multicultural team or a multicultural church without being willing to have hard conversations and out really wrestling through like this intersection of race and faith.
What's an example of a hard conversation of a type? Don't have to name names, obviously, but like what's the type of hard conversation that a church like yours might have to have about race?
Yeah. Oh, we've had so many. I don't even know where to start. Like we had it years ago. We did a night where we just had a kind of a town hall conversation about racism and systemic racism and people's experiences and letting people share. We've had a conversation recently with some of our Asian community within our church and their experience and kind of some of the stereotypes that they have run up to in churches and how do they feel safe here. And so I think having conversations about, how this cultural thing that we're all witnessing, because we're all witnessing these things together, how it impacts people, being able to hear each other, being able to say, well, actually that means that for you, but this is really hurtful to me. Whether it's, everything from George Floyd to Charlie Kirk, endless, like everything I feel like sparks,
Absolutely.
these conversations. And so being able to sit together and have conversations and hear each other is beautiful.
Wow.
It's challenging.
Yeah.
Because you have to be willing to like hear and adjust.
Totally.
Right?
Can I tell you about something challenging from my world of universities and ask you how this plays out in your world, in the church? Not that the worlds are always so different. I saw it recently in a publication that an infographic that a professor at Indiana University's School of Social Work showed in a class, and it got her banned from the university.
Okay.
It's a diagram. I have it here. Just you can probably look it up. But it's about white supremacy. Like what's overt white supremacy and then like the kind of covert white supremacy. And at the top are things that you'd mentioned, at the top of the triangle, overt racial slurs, KKK, hate crimes, lynching, swastikas, burning crosses, neo-Nazis, stuff like that. Then there's a large bottom of it, which has lots of things kind of put together like colorblindness or blaming the victim or tokenism or housing discrimination or bootstrap theory, cultural appropriation, self-appointed white ally. I felt sort of convicted there.
Totally.
Denial of racism, denial of white privilege. But then one of these things I circled because I thought, it's anti-immigration policies or practices. And I was like, wow, okay. I was like, there are lots of things being grouped together here, right, as covert white supremacy. And I'm like, okay, you have this really diverse church in which you're willing to dive into these hard issues. Yeah. How is your church thinking about immigration? Because you have like people, real people and real problems, but then you also have this question of like I can imagine, some Christians in America today feeling like, I don't hate people. I love people. I don't want people being deported, but like, are you saying as Christians, we all have to have the same sort of like wonky government, style immigration policy?
Totally.
Like, how are you as a pastor in a diverse congregation thinking about this immigration moment and this conflict that we're having? How's your church handling this?
Yeah, thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
This is, obviously something we're totally neck deep in.
You're in it.
We're in it. We have.
I assumed you were. That's why I thought I'd just ask.
As are many churches in LA. We're actually part of a coalition of churches in LA that are really trying to tackle this. How do we do this together? How do we, we have undocumented folks in our church. We serve refugees. So we're very in this world, but we also have people in our church with very different voting preferences and very different worldviews.
Yeah. And you see that, you feel that.
Completely.
It's there.
It is there.
Wow,
so,
okay.
I think
That's a rare kind of diversity too.
Yes.
Even just that.
Yes. So I can maybe just tell you my personal.
Yeah.
I'm a child of an immigrant, so I'm first generation Mexican immigrant. I also have that background of like, I'm from a small rural farm working community in Central California. So I have a passion around this as well.
Yeah.
My own family is deeply divided on this issue,
Wow.
my extended family. So I feel like I'm in the thick of all of it.
It's complicated.
Part of what was necessary for me is I wanted to go get outside of the noise and the rhetoric and the political yelling and go see firsthand. So I have done these 2 pilgrimages that were phenomenal and very educational for me, to go down to the border, El Paso, Juarez, and then San Diego, Tijuana side. And we met with ICE agents, we met with Border Patrol, we met with churches on the ground, we met with immigrants, and really learning the scope of what's happening. And I walked away so like undone, because I realized like everybody's actually saying the same thing. Like, this is also political on both sides. Neither party is doing this right.
What kind of same thing was
Oh
everybody
my gosh,
saying?
that's what they're all saying. I mean, it was
what was
just
everybody saying that was the same?
That it's literally like I'm sitting in the ICE office getting statistics, and around, like, for example, the rates of undocumented folks who commit crimes is astronomically lower than the rate of Americans who commit crimes. The year I was there, it was 9% had committed a crime. 33% of Americans have a criminal record, right?
Yeah.
But yet the political part of it, now, and granted, they're saying this, everybody on the ground is saying this happens both on the right or the left. Like, nobody's really doing anything, this has become so political. There are narratives. Americans are so uneducated when all this data is here.
Yeah.
But we just hear whatever we want to hear,
Right.
And so that started this like, okay, hold on. There is this so much noise, how do we really peel back the partisanship, peel back the polarization?
Wow.
And once again, as a person of faith, Scripture is full of very clear mandates on our job to love the foreigner and how we are to treat the foreigner and welcome the foreigner in our midst. And so a lot of, in those conversations, talking with folks, what I learned was the reality is from a like legal policy perspective, this is not, no administration can really fix this. This has to be a bipartisan, both parties coming together and create some dignified, healthy policy around immigration. And I think as followers of Jesus, that should be a no-brainer. That dignified policy, things like somebody shouldn't have to wait 10 years to find out if they have asylum or not. And our systems are so backed up that sometimes people have to wait 10 years, like dignified. So I think it's sad to me that it's become so enraged and so inflamed. And, for us, we've done, things like, okay, it doesn't really matter what your political preference is. We can all agree that these people are valuable, that we are called to love and serve. And we can all help try to push both parties to come to the table to come up with some solutions, right? So we've, some of the things we're doing in our community are, we offer some legal services to folks who are working on their asylum process or are undocumented. We help them, work with that. We help support families, help them get what they need, that kind of thing. But I'm just on so many of these issues that we're dealing with culturally, I'm just so ready for Christians to realize that the bit they're getting from either side is going to fall short and to actually just show up, roll up your sleeves and do something about it, because we can actually bring great change. And we're seeing it in LA. We're seeing, I love watching what's happening in LA, like the community really rallying around, churches showing up to really support folks. And
I mean, a lot of problems here. Probably in a better world, none of these things would be happening and we'd all agree. But I mean, in a sense, the Lord can use things for good. Do you feel like this has revitalized your church in a way, or not like you wish it would continue just because it's such a hot issue for people, but it sounds like it's energizing people in a way to become maybe better people of faith too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. But and the flip side of that coin is there's so much grief, like
yeah. That's why I say I don't.
Brutal.
Yeah,
like LA has been hit. Like it's, I sit and weep with people beautiful people who, we have, people in partner churches in LA, like from the underground church in Iran, refugees, who've been ripped up and taken. And it's like, there's so much grief that's happening as families are being separated. And that's why my whole thing is it's like, I think people love to say, right, like these extremes, like you're either open borders or you're, it's like, I think most people actually really just want a healthy process. And there should be healthy ways for people to apply for asylum here. There should be healthy ways. And the problem is people don't realize, because we're so uneducated on this, that there's really no easy way. You have to come to the border and to apply for asylum, you know?
I hear what you're saying. So I heard a Christian leader, won't name, but I heard a Christian leader say in a context somewhat recently, it used to be the case 10 or 20 years ago, it used to be the case that there was a middle in this country. There isn't anymore, and let's face it, we got to pick a side.
Wow.
So I do have a sense, though, that for some Christian leaders, it's not the kind of leadership that you're talking about, that your church is doing, but that there's a sense like, well, in these kind of hot moments where there are these sides, you pick a side and you have people rally, and that's how you can actually get money and power. I guess that's what I was thinking about in a way, like maybe just I'm so sheltered. When you brought up the grief and those feelings, I felt like this surge of pain go through me, like, oh gosh, I'm like so sheltered. Like I have no clue what this would be like for somebody. But I hear people actually taking this moment and just openly saying, yeah, we should totally be using this to try to get money, adherence, et cetera, for whatever the case, because that's how people get excited and donate money and do the things that they do, right? Mm-hmm. So there is that perspective out there.
Yeah, and it's sad, because I honestly, when I think about, I come back to Jesus and I come back to the kingdom, and the kingdom is all about nuances, and it's all about holding these tensions. And once again, not to over spiritualize, but what is the work of the enemy to accuse? Like it's the enemy is the accuser. I feel like it literally is the bait of the enemy to get us to point our fingers, to feel like you have to pick a side. The reality is it's like, these things are so nuanced, and Jesus could help the woman being stoned and say, don't help rescue her out of the situation, at the same time tell her, go and sin no more. Like Jesus can hold those nuances. Why can't we? Like, it's not that hard. So I don't know. It's a tough one. Yeah. I'm not a fan of pick a side. I'm a fan of follow Jesus.
Well, and it sounds like if you're a pastor in a diverse community, pick a side is not actually just at a basic level, like serving your congregation as a shepherd. Right. That's not.
Or our community. Yeah.
Your community, your city, your place, the land, the people who work there.
Yeah. Agreed.
There's so much that can be said here. I want to turn here as we sort of roughly bring it in for landing. I know we could talk for a very long time. I want to ask you about your advocacy work around children in the church. What got you interested in that? And talk to me about the place of children in the church today.
It's interesting. It wasn't something I ever thought like, I love kids, but I never thought like, I have this heart for kids, Quite honestly, there was a moment about 25 years ago sitting, I was right out of college working in Africa and in Kenya for a couple of years, and had this moment. I was sitting in the dirt next to this little street kid and sharing Jesus with this little kid. And it was one of those moments that just defines you. And as clear as could be, I heard the Lord speak to me. I'm talking, it was one of those like, my bones shook. Wow. I knew it was God speaking to me. And I heard the Lord say to me, will you teach the next generation the undiluted gospel? And my answer was funny now that I look back, but it was very honest. And I just said, God, I'm American. I don't know the undiluted gospel. And I had this realization of like, I don't think I know the undiluted gospel, but if you will teach me, I will teach them. And
what did you understand undiluted to mean? Like real, like somehow not
real, authentic. I feel like so much Now, granted, I'm a pastor in the West, okay? I'm not trying to knock the church in the West, but I feel like in the West, I was having at that season of my life a very big realization that a lot of my kind of Christian upbringing, it was like Jesus plus American culture, Jesus plus power, Jesus plus comfort, Jesus, and it was this like, what does it look like just to come back to just Jesus, And so I was already having that experience, but God through that, and I just told God, if you will teach me, I will teach them, and God began to just grip my heart for the next generation. I began to realize children are not the church of tomorrow. They're the church of today. They're just as much the church of today. And when you start looking at demographics globally, almost half of the global population is children and youth. So I began to think, oh my gosh, like children all over are being shoved into these back rooms to just have a little craft and eat a snack while we have the real church. Yep. And we're not even raising up disciple, like we're not even using half the body, And so if you imagine the bride of Christ, like if we're only using and working with half the body, like we are like this walking zombie, like we're limiting ourselves. And so that began this journey of me like really going after teaching kids to know God, to know the scripture, to when Jesus says, don't hinder them from me, like really teaching the fullness of the gospel to kids, teaching kids how to hear his voice, teaching kids how to partner with God, and begin to see just a move of God amongst children. And
I wonder if I could share a personal experience with kids in church. Maybe you could counsel me or tell me this is normal or not normal. I imagine some parents might be listening. They might feel similarly. Like there have been moments, I have two daughters now, they're preteen and a teen. Okay. I'm in it. And we've been in some environments where it's like I felt this pressure to do exactly that. Like, okay, there's a kids service going on. I need to my girls need to go to that. They need to learn in the way that's like helpful or something, and we need to contribute to the programming. But then if they didn't want to, we'd just be like, well, we're still going to church, and you're just going to sit here in the church service with us. And then it's like seeing them be in there and worship and hear the sermons and relate, realizing that they could understand the sermons. Then I kind of felt like, well, no, this is good. This is what we want. My wife and I and our daughters were sitting in church together, but then it's like, are we not being supportive though of the programming? And like, it felt like a catch-22, like I couldn't get it right as a parent. Like there was no place where I felt like I was doing everything right by the way that the church was. It was nobody's fault, certainly not the church's fault, but just a struggle as a parent.
Totally. I mean, I feel like probably any parent listening to this can relate to that. Yeah. I also have two teens and a young adult. I know this journey.
And people will talk about choosing churches based on like, well, my kids. And so there's this feeling of like the church has to be somewhere where your kids can go. Otherwise, you're going to have this battle every Sunday.
Right.
What advice do you have for parents in situations like that? Trying to make this work for their kids, but just feeling like, oh, it's so hard. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. I think obviously like, being in a place where your kids can have spiritual community is important. But I think more than just having friends who call themselves Christians is, are you in a church where your kids see people genuinely serving God and loving God, like walking out their authentic faith? Because they could find that maybe in kids ministry or maybe out with the adults, but are they really being discipled? And not to mention, the church is going to see your kids once, maybe twice a week. Like that's got to happen at home, right? So it's like coming back to, man, do I really even recognize who my child is in God? Am I really helping to form them now, And I often wish that our church could just come in and take my kids and, fix it. But it's like,
I've never thought of that before. That'd be amazing. I'm going to start thinking that.
Yes.
I'm joking. I've thought of that. Just anything, fix it.
Please help.
I mean, or fix me. I mean, fix all of us in some way.
But I think just, from a young age, like really making space for kids. I mean, we have kids in our church that are, leading out in justice, kids that are leading their friends to the Lord, kids that are, genuinely on fire for God. And my heart is that we see a generation of kids that don't have church hurt like my generation has, that love God and know God and are spared from a lot of pain and problems in life because they actually had a real authentic relationship with God. And so I think churches should not be just adult focused. I think churches should be far more multi-generational in how we're leading and how we're discipling.
Jennifer, I have a feeling like you've only been able to share just a small percentage of your passion for these topics that you've talked about, the justice issues and the children in church. Thank you so much for joining us and for having this conversation with us. Blessings to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.